Productions. I'm Bob.
And I'm Josh.
You sound like Eeyore.
I'm John. My name's Ben. And I'm mad.
How's it going?
It's going good. How are you?
Pretty good. Did you know that the guy that does the voice for Eeyore is also Optimus Prime?
Yes, I did.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
But when you hear it,
It
you know
just
that
sounds like this.
you can hear him. Like,
I wonder if he's like, honey, I need to go get some broccoli from the store. That's what he sounds like. Because Nancy Cartwright doesn't sound like Bart Simpson. She has to, like, make her voice do that.
Yeah. Some people just sound that way. Like when you hear Peter Cullen, the guy that does Optimus Prime in Eeyore, when you hear him talk in an interview, like, he's not as, like, you know, in charge as Optimus Prime. But you can hear it. It's definitely in his voice. It's pretty cool.
My favorite voiceover thing ever is when, instance, is when you get to see old footage of Harrison Ford and the guy who's in the Chewbacca suit, and he's just like speaking like a dude.
Yeah.
Where it doesn't have the Chewie sound dubbed over, and he's like, I'm gonna go do the thing.
His voice is really high.
It's super silly.
You've heard the original Darth Vader voice too, right?
No.
Oh my gosh. David Prowse, who
Yeah.
was the original actor, he thought he was doing the voice for Darth Vader.
Oh.
So they added the voice after the fact. And his voice is like this! So, you know, Darth Vader like, I'm going to kill you all! It's British and not quite like that, but you know, that idea. It's terrible. Terrible, terrible, terrible. So yeah, you should definitely go look up some clips of that, because they're equally as funny.
That's good.
Yeah. Anyway, how's it going?
It's going good.
Cool.
So Disney could do that. Disney could just make shorts, like they're doing all the Pixar shorts that are doing really well on Disney Plus. They could do throwbacks to non-dubbed Star Wars scenes.
There you go.
It's just Chewie talking like this. Where's the princess? I got a new set.
Yeah, you did.
I have, for those watching, I was going to do a reveal, but I think I just messed with it. Boom! I have the Infinity Gauntlet. And I'm pretty stoked about this. This is not true to size. It's only like 12 inches tall.
It would be pretty awesome to build one that you could actually put on. I don't know how that would work, but...
I don't know either, but I know a lot of people, including our buddy Daryl from the Broken Nerd, have modeled the Infinity Gauntlet. And out of the entire like Marvel saga leading up to Infinity War, I think the Infinity Gauntlet is one of my favorite props.
Really?
Yeah. It's clean, and like I think Thanos was a really intriguing character, and I just think the Infinity Gauntlet is a really cool prop. So when Lego came out with the little small one that has the most gold whatever pieces that any Lego set has, I jumped on it.
Oh, yeah.
And it finally came.
It's funny because when they first announced it, you pre-ordered it, and it was, I don't know, what, a month or
More than months. Yeah, several.
before it showed up, and then it still hadn't showed up yet, and one day I went to Walmart, and there were a bunch on the shelf.
Yeah, because it
And
was...
then it showed up like the next day.
They were available in England on the shelf like months before that
Yeah.
they were available on the Lego website.
I don't know what's up with that. I was noticing yesterday that Lego, I was thinking about the fact that Lego releases a new product or groups of products at a ridiculous rate. If you really think about it, think about other toy companies who, granted, they're probably tied to more external forces, but, you know, like a new wave of Ben 10 figures or whatever, or even Star Wars figures, a pretty noticeable brand. They come out 2 times a year, maybe 3, depending on like media release. But Lego, man, they just like at the beginning of this month, we're putting out 4 new gigantic sets that are $200 a piece, and then they sprinkle in smaller ones across it, and then you know they have stuff announced through the end of the year that doesn't come out. Like you can't order it until November. You can't order it until December or whatever. I think it's pretty cool. It's just a little bit different than everybody else seems to do it.
Well, I think in the Ben 10 analogy, they would have to create tooling and product lines and an entire manufacturing process, a painting process to get that one figure to be the master to then make thousands of them. Like Lego with the system, like they're already making these things that I have in my hand. So all their work is just like the design, I would imagine, the design work up front and going like, now just take this itemized list, robots, and put them in a bag and then put them in a box.
I do think they're still kind of manufacturing. Yeah, they are. They have the molds and stuff for them, but they are manufacturing for kits. I think at large, not like these white pieces are probably ubiquitous enough that they have them in everything. But that's what I was saying about not having to lean on external stuff so much. Mm-hmm. They do their own manufacturing. They do their own design work. They do their own. They have licenses for Star Wars and other things outside. So I guess they have to rely on that. But it's not like we have to hope that the mold company makes the mold in time to get the thing in time. And they're a little more self-contained, I would assume.
People don't know what you're talking about when you said that. When you said we didn't want to lean on external sources. That's fun. You let that slip, and I caught it. People have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So there are external forces, which means people that are not here with us. And Bob doesn't want to rely on people who are not here with us. Now you're in. There you go. The veil got pulled back.
There you go. Now you have all the information you'll need on that
inside
topic.
the kimono, people.
Yeah. Anyway, there are more I like to mix up things to be discussed in the future that were closer to being discussed, but now they are being halted and not going to be discussed for a while.
Lately, you have talked on making it, and you've asked on social media about teasing projects and that whole notion, which again I think is very outside of your nature to do that for reasons. And then people are like, no, you should tease projects. But then if we would have teased the thing that we're like vaguely talking about, people would have been disappointed.
Yep.
They would have, but I think they would have shared in our disappointment because we're disappointed too.
Yeah, I don't want people to share in our disappointment of things.
Yeah, we don't
want to
be,
give other people reasons to be disappointed.
Yeah, we're not Debbie Downers.
Wah, wah.
We're Lisa Lifters.
Lisa Lifters? I've never heard of that before.
I made that up just now.
Wow, that's pretty good.
TM.
Yeah, SNL, you can't have that one. Well, what's new? What's new in life?
When's the last time we spoke? Did we talk last week?
I don't know.
Man, I don't know.
It's hard to remember.
Kids have started school.
Yeah.
Across the board. Mom is now the director. She's in her second week of being the dictator of the homeschool community. And she's doing a fantastic job.
She's the emperor of homeschool.
Yep. She's doing great. My son tested for his new Taekwondo belt and passed with flying colors. That was awesome.
That is awesome.
And the day that he got his new belt, they had to learn new forms and new stuff. And their form is not all that different, so he was kind of excited because he did well the first day. They had a new instructor, because normally his instructor is this very petite Latino woman. And it's really funny listening to her try to pronounce and like trying to get these kids to say these Korean words. Because not only like she has a thick accent, so it's hard between like a Spanish accent trying to convey Korean words, but she's very soft-spoken.
Oh.
But she commands attention, but she doesn't command attention through yelling. And so she has an entire like big room full of kids. And then she says these words, and they're like, huh? And she walks up, she's like, this is what I said, why are you not doing it? And they're like, oh, okay. My bad.
I just couldn't hear you.
Yeah. And so they had a different instructor. And I'm not joking. I want to bring this guy around to things. His new instructor looks like Taserface from Guardians 2. And my son is like, no, he doesn't. I'm like, buddy, he absolutely does. And it's cool. Like, he doesn't have like purple skin or whatever, but like if there was a Midwestern middle-aged version of Taserface, boom, he teaches at my son's Taekwondo dojang. Oh, but this guy like seems to like my son. I mean, he's a cool kid and all, but he's like, oh, you need to kick harder. And he's very different from the way that the other soft-spoken instructor does. And like, he makes it a little more fun and everybody has a lot of higher energy. So at the end, like they passed out the belts because everybody passed a thing the other day. So they were giving out belts and he called my son's name. He's like, come up here real quick. I was like, oh, dang, what's he doing? Then he goes in the back and like grabs a board. This like big wooden panel. He's like, I want to see if you can break this board, which was never required of him yet. He's like, I just want to see if you can do it because I think you did a good job today. And homeboy snapped this board like in front of all these people.
That's awesome.
With a front kick.
First try?
Second try.
Cool.
He's like, you get one practice and then you have to nail it or you're going to go sit down. And, yeah. With an opkubi, which is a front kick. Korean listeners, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I've learned it from a soft-spoken Latino woman. But yeah, second time he snapped his board and he was like beaming with excitement. And I love it when there's opportunities to see my kids be proud of themselves.
Yeah.
This makes me so happy. And I think it's really crazy. This is like martial arts, something that I enjoy doing, so I figured my kids would be too. And my oldest son has really taken to it.
That's great.
How's soccer going?
Soccer has not really started yet. I mean, practices have started, but the games have not started yet. And a lot of the practices have been canceled for weather or this or that. It's a totally different thing. We've already had some coaches get COVID. Some coaches' kids get COVID. Not because of soccer, just in general, but then that changes, who can practice and who's where, and other coaches are coming in to take responsibility for teams whose coaches can't come to practice because their kids have it, and so it's definitely different. And I don't know exactly how that's going to play out as far as the rest of the year or the rest of the season. But our games start middle of next week, so that'll be interesting. I mean, I'm kind of looking forward to it. I enjoy watching the kids play.
Do you cheer for them? Because you don't strike me as a person who cheers.
For my kids,
yeah,
I don't really cheer for the team so much.
Yeah.
But, I want to encourage them. But I also know that when they're on the field in the middle of play and they get the ball, they can't hear me. It's not
they're super hyper-focused, yeah.
And they're far away. Like, the older kids, those fields are huge. Like, I didn't play soccer growing up, so I think of soccer fields as a certain size.
The pitch?
And the younger kids, like, their fields aren't huge. I mean, they're what I would expect. But then the older kids, the middle school and high school, and those fields are just gigantic. It seems like ridiculous to ask those kids to play on that size field, but they do. So I know that in those games, they can't hear me if they're all that way. But yeah, I do yell for them a little bit because I want them to be encouraged and be amped up, But I'm definitely not one of those parents that's on the sideline yelling. Whereas Jenny, she will not sit down. If she gets to watch a game and she's not coaching, she's pacing back and forth. She's yelling to him. She's trying to give him like, "Here it comes! It's watch out for the whatever." And that's not me. I'm always like pulling my hat down a little bit, like she's not with me.
Oh,
I'm just kidding. But yeah, I'm actually looking forward to the games. I'm looking forward to fall soccer more than summer soccer.
It'll be fall eventually, I think.
Yeah, hopefully at some point. But in spring soccer, not summer soccer, spring soccer, it just got hotter. Every game is like more and more miserable. And this way, in the fall, it goes the opposite direction.
Right.
It gets more and more comfortable. So by the time you're at the end of the season, it's beginning of November or whatever, So it's just cool enough that you can sit out there with a blanket in your chair and watch a game, and it's comfortable. And
some pumpkin spice?
No.
I remember playing soccer in high school, and it was freezing. Oh, it was so cold.
It was probably like in the high 60s.
Well, it was Florida soccer, so it was relative. But it was freezing. And I remember, like, during breaks, we would go sit on the bench and looking at my teammates, and we're all just, like, steaming. Like, all of the steam is coming off of us because we're running around, getting all sweaty, and then sitting down, and it's so cold. The water is condensing. And my mom made me this beanie. She crocheted me this beanie. And it was huge. It had, like, a big pom-pom on the end. And as a high schooler, I thought it was, like, ironically fun.
Oh, yeah.
And I wore that thing all the time. And at a certain point, it wasn't ironic anymore. It was just, I need this thing to not die.
Yeah.
It's so cold.
There was one game last season in the spring. And I don't remember why it was so cool, but it was especially cool that day and just dumping rain. I mean, like, not just rain. Like, it was just pouring and pouring and pouring. And I guess I just assumed that they would, when you get to a certain point of rain, it's like making it hard to run in a wet field.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would assume that not only lightning, but even a lot of rain would be enough to cut off the game. Nope. And we had driven an hour to Louisville to play this game. And I thought to bring that little tent thing we have, like the pop-up, frame tent thing. And so We set that up, and we were underneath that. Of course, it's like 6 feet tall, so there's still water coming in on the sides. But it was not. We weren't just exposed. Every other parent there was just sitting in a chair. With, like, some of them had umbrellas, but not all of them. And everybody was completely drenched. And we were all cold because we were sitting still. The kids are all running around, covered in mud, soaking wet, head to toe. Luckily, they had on the side where the teams are, they had their own little tent, so they could kind of get in that. But man, I felt terrible for them. It just didn't seem worthwhile. It's like rec league.
Yeah.
You've driven an hour. These kids are miserable, and it's not going to stop. It was like all day long, and they just played through it. And then another game came on right after them, and played through it. And, ugh.
We played during a thunderstorm one time, and the field got all muddy.
During a thunderstorm?
Thunderstorm, whatever. It was Florida, so every time it rains, it's a thunderstorm. True. But the field was super muddy, and I remember I was all the way, because I played defenseman, and I was near the opponent's goal for whatever reason, and it was super muddy because their goalie had been like pacing back and forth, and I lost my shoe.
Oh.
I went to kick this ball, and my shoe came off, my cleat, and I couldn't find it. And so I played like no one really noticed because everybody's legs and stuff were all gross and muddy anyway. And so I played like the other half of this game until halftime, like with no shoe on.
Wow. And
when I came out, they're like, "Where's your shoe?" And I was like, "It's down there somewhere." And they're like, "Go find it." And so in the break, I had to go like pacing back and forth like on Saving Private Ryan. That guy just like picks up his arm. Like that was me just like walking around the muddy grossness trying to find my shoe that was buried.
Well, hopefully we won't have any terrible weather this fall. But like I said, I am looking forward to the fall games a little more than the other ones, but they haven't started yet. So we'll see how long I am excited about it. And then when I get bored. It's weird this year, there's not as many out-of-town games, which I'm excited about, but there's a lot more weekday games. And so it's not just, practices through the week and games on the weekend. It's, I don't know. There's a lot. And we have 3 separate teams between all the kids. So, I don't know. It'll be a lot, but we'll see. What was I going to talk about? Oh, yeah. Shang-Chi. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, Anthony hasn't seen it.
Oh.
Do you want to spoil it for him?
I don't even think he's paying attention.
That's fine.
You can spoil it for me. It's fine.
He said we can spoil it for him. So anybody else listening, we're going to spoil it for you as well. So if you haven't seen it, you should go see it. Just hit pause, go directly to the movie theater, watch a movie, come back and hit unpause as soon as you get back in the car from the movie theater. Cool?
It'll be fun. I think those are the most clear instructions we can give anybody.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yep. What did you think? Well, first tell your situation, because I think that may be some...
Situation. That's fun. I went to go see it Monday night. What's that? Memorial Day? Labor Day? Veterans Day?
I don't
Whatever
remember.
the most recent.
I don't remember which one's which either. There are 2 Mondays in the year.
Memlaboral Day.
Memlaboral.
So it was Memlaboral Day, and I went to go see it at like the 9 o'clock showing because I didn't want my kids to have to go because I wanted to be a whole thing. I just wanted to go see it really quick. My wife wasn't really interested, so I went to the movies at 9 o'clock as a 37-year-old. And no matter what Marvel movie is playing at 9 o'clock on a school night, I'm gonna doze. And so my consciousness level has no bearing on the quality of this movie.
Right.
I like to put that out. I did not fall asleep, but I had to talk myself out of not falling
You
asleep.
drifted in and out.
There, I would blink, and I would have no idea how long my eyes were closed for that blink.
That's falling asleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been there before. But
So I watched the movie. I have feelings about the movie. I know characters and plot points. The big bad fight at the end that happens in all movies is a little mushy. Memory's a little mushy right there. So,
do you have any questions about it? Do you need me to fill in any gaps?
well, let's get to that point.
Okay.
Let's work up to that.
So
I
overall,
can not sound like an idiot at the beginning.
overall impressions of the movie in general.
I really liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the MCU, these superhero movies, like, is so crazy right now. Like, Disney Plus has invented the multiverse. Like, sure, we get that. the status quo superhero movie. This person was exposed to the rays or to the goo and now has to fight justice, and they're particular bad guys, and eventually they're going to come back together. That formula has been kind of shaken up, which I like it. I think it's a lot more character driven than kind of procedural driven now.
Yeah.
WandaVision set a cool path. Loki set an awesome path. Falcon and Winter Soldier was dumb. So the idea that Shang-Chi, which, I mean, I dabbled in comics. I was a Spider-Man fan. I had no idea who Shang-Chi was.
Yeah, same.
I imagine that there is a superhero for every cultural group. But I don't know who they were.
Right.
They weren't the big names. If they weren't on Saturday morning, if they didn't have their own Saturday morning cartoon, I'm sorry, I didn't really know who you are, because that usually set me down a path of investigation. So there was a completely new story. I don't know how true to form it was to the comic book.
Yeah.
But because it was a lesser known character, I think that they could drive that. So what was your experience with Shang-Chi before watching the movie?
Absolutely nothing.
Okay.
I knew a little bit about Iron Fist, very little bit. And I think they are, in the comics, maybe tangential.
Okay.
I know they're not, like, from the same group. I don't know how much they interacted, but for some reason there was an association, and I could be way off base there. But I didn't really know what his superpower was. I didn't know his backstory. I didn't know really anything about him. But I will say that I love martial arts movies. Love them. I always love them. And so I think I was just mostly excited about how they would take what I knew would be really good martial arts action and put it into the MCU without it just being like... So here's a problem I have, and this is not to Shang-Chi. This was my expectation for it. You didn't see Snake Eyes, did you?
No, because all the G.I. Joe movies to me are DC level movies that are not worth my attention.
I think they are sub-DC level movies.
Oh, that's harsh.
I love G.I. Joe growing up, like, for real. And I know that all the movies have been terrible, but I want to give them a shot anyway. Just like the Transformers movies, they're all pretty terrible except for Bumblebee. But I'm going to give them a shot. I'm going to watch them just because. So I went to see, after watching the trailer, I thought, well, this is a Snake Eyes movie it's not G.I. Joe. They can do a backstory, and it really could be anybody. You could call him any other name, and it would just be a cool, like,
Kevin
ninja movie. This is what it looked like, you know? Like, they're going to do a prequel thing, and they don't have to, like, he doesn't have to wear the suit, and it doesn't matter. And so I was going into it that way. And watching that movie, the first maybe 30, 40 minutes of it, I'm like, this is awesome. This is great. Like, they're doing the thing. It doesn't have anything to do with G.I. Joe. Then all of a sudden, and it's like, it's pretty believable, you know? There's these gangs, there's fighting, there's these people that are really awesome with martial arts, even though they're carrying around swords in LA for no particular reason. But, like, it's kind of grounded in, you know, I'm air quoting reality. Like, it's realistic. And then this, spoiler alert for Snake Eyes, by the way. So this movie's, like, awesome, and it's going along, and then all of a sudden, it's like they were like, I've got the beginning to a story. Here, give this to your 4-year-old and let them finish the story. It goes off the deep end, goes down this ridiculous path. There's these giant snakes.
Oh.
All of a sudden. Like, they fall into a hole, and then I'm talking, like, snakes as big as your car.
Okay.
That big around. Several
Not
of
a
them.
dragon.
No. Snakes.
Because he's snake eyes.
Right.
And so then he plucks out their eyes.
No.
Oh.
I don't really
He
know
just really likes their eyes.
Snake Eyes came from, like, this bad guy who rolled dice to kill his dad and whatever. It was stupid.
But he gambled with the snakes.
No. Yeah, he played blackjack, or not blackjack. What's the game? Craps with the snakes. Anyway, it was terrible. It was terrible. So I went into Shang-Chi with the same thing. Like, they can start it really cool, but I hope that when they bring it into the MCU-ness, when it becomes a superhero, they're not like, oh, well, all of a sudden he has glowing fingers, or he has, you know, because I'm thinking, like, Iron Fist is like a
I did not like Iron Fist for that reason.
Well, I liked that. I didn't like the Iron Fist show, but I liked the character. I think that the power's cool. But I was afraid that they were going to do the same thing. It was going to be realistic, and then all of a sudden it was going to take a dive.
Okay.
I don't think it did that, because I think they set it up at the beginning that there was a mystical thing at the very, very beginning. The first thing you see is, you know, Dad Chi, I don't know what his name was, with the 10 rings. So you start out with
My name's Carl Chi.
Carl Chi.
I'm a jeweler.
You get the mystical unknown power right out of the gate. And I think that set it up. I think that was a good move on their part because you don't go into it as this is a kung fu movie. This is a martial arts movie that then takes a turn.
Yeah.
It's a mystical movie that falls back into reality.
That is also happening in the physical world.
Right. I thought that was a really good move. And that was only in contrast to seeing how they did Snake Eyes and how it just like...
They inverted that formula.
Yeah. Like Jump the Shark is not even a good way to put it. It was so...
Jump the Shark?
You never heard that?
No.
So there was an episode of the Happy Days. Happy Days
Oh, where Fonzie wrote a thing over there?
literally jumped the shark.
Oh.
And so that's become a saying where people take something and then they just go so far out that it becomes stupid. Don't go see Snake Eyes ever. Terrible. Terrible, terrible, terrible. Anyway, I liked Shang-Chi because it got that out of the way. The fight scene, the whole like bus thing was awesome.
That was an awesome fight scene.
It was amazing. How they fit all that within the space of a bus was crazy. And obviously it's not realistic. I'm not saying it was like a, Jackie Chan style, I'm going to do all my own stunts reality, but it was set in the real world, and I thought that was super cool. As it got to the end, with the more mystical elements, it lost me a little bit in that I just wasn't quite as invested. As soon as you lean into like a mythical power that nobody really explains and doesn't really, like, you don't know why the bad guys are bad. I don't know. I didn't dislike it, but I wasn't quite as, captured. Whereas the first half of it, I was really invested. But I definitely enjoyed the entire thing. That was really, really good. Really well done.
So the movie takes the 10 rings from Iron Man 3?
Yeah.
Iron Man 3.
Yeah.
So the Mandarin, who is supposed to be the world's most devastating terrorist. And it's funny because they talked about it, and you see that character.
Which was fantastic.
In Shang-Chi. Yeah.
I loved how they did that.
Yeah. Ben Kingsley is a fantastic actor.
He really is.
Man. If we make a movie, we got to hire Ben Kingsley.
Okay.
But... So you said Dad Chi. I don't even remember his name. But yeah, he starts off in like the long time ago's, and he has these 10 rings on his arm, and then he gives him immortality, and he's able to conquer the world, and he conquers all of the things. And he hears about this place that has a special power on this map that he found, and he wants to go conquer that place too. And then there's like a gatekeeper, and it's a pretty lady, and then they get into like a crouching tiger fight.
She
then
totally
it becomes
whoops his butt.
Yeah, she beats him, but like it's a love fight.
Yeah.
They're kind of fighting, but then they're dancing, and we're getting so much development and deep character arc through this fight. And I remember thinking like, okay, this is neat, but I kind of want to see her just like beat the crap out of that guy.
Tear him apart.
Yeah, like bash his face to the ground.
Like if you're really a guardian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's your one job, ma'am. Is to not fall in love fight with the bad guy. But whatever. Then they fall in love. They have Shang-Chi and like. So yeah, it's all set in mysticism, and then they come into like San Francisco, and it's just like a guy living in a little crappy apartment. And so I really dug I like the Superman aspect of characters. That they're a regular person is not their real person. Like Kill Bill, like that notion that Bill talked about the bride, that she's pretending. You can't be Clark Kent because Clark Kent is always Superman. And so the outward face that you're projecting to people is you're not trying to hide your alter ego with a Spider-Man or a Batman mask. You're putting on glasses to try to hide your actual powers to blend in with all the normals. And even changed his name to Sean, which was a funny point in the movie.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, then he just like turns out and starts beating people on this train to everybody's surprise, and then it goes back and I gotta go talk to my dad, and the drive Like everybody's drive for why they were doing what they were doing, I felt was really slow. I wanted that bus fight a lot more. And maybe
Yeah.
it was because I was sleepy. Or maybe because I'm impatient and have ADD, but I want to see some fighting. I want to see some face punching, Marvel action with actual fists. Like, don't just like, speak you, here's like laser hands, beep, 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 and I'm going to shoot you and I'm going to fly, and like missiles. And no, you punch that dude in the face.
Yeah.
He got bloody. It was cool. Let's do more of that. That was fun. And then it got real deep into backstories. My sister did this and this is my thing. And it's an origin story, which is fantastic. But I think during the story building part was great. It was just kind of slow. And then there was dragons.
It definitely slowed down in those parts. But I do think that they did a pretty good job of like coming back to the action. Because there were a couple of different kind of exposition points there when he was talking about his sister and that whole thing. But that was in between the bus fight and the cage match fight, you know. And then
That fight on the scaffolding on the side made me very queasy and uncomfortable.
Oh, really?
They did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
They had a fight between Shang-Chi and his fun, like, silly girlfriend, Aquafina, who's just along for this ride the entire time, and a bunch of henchmen on the side of bamboo scaffolding on the side of a skyscraper.
yeah.
And I was uncomfortable. The response, I was like, oh, quit.
That's funny.
But
But I
I
do think
VR experience, but watching a
Oh
movie.
gosh, yeah, I wouldn't be able to do that.
So watching it in theaters, if not for just the full immersion of trying to fight on the side of a skyscraper, it was kind of unfortunately worth it, but it was cool, so you should do it.
There was an IMAX version of that movie. That would have been a lot. That scene would have been a lot there. But I do think they went back and forth, you know, pretty well between the action and the exposition stuff. Although I do think some of it definitely slowed down. But I lost my train of thought. I had a thing. There were some cool like connective things. Have you ever seen Kung Fu Hustle?
No, you've talked about it. I haven't seen it.
If you have not, you and everybody listening, if you've not seen Kung Fu Hustle, you have to go watch that movie. Especially if you like martial arts. But it's just one of those, like, it's, I think, like a foundational movie to a lot of other stuff. And so when you see it, you're going to be like, oh, that's where that's from. Or, oh, that's why the thing. And so I've loved this movie for several years. I think I first saw it when I was in college. And there's a guy in it who has rings on his arms. And he has 10 rings on each arm. And he's trying to think, he's like in the town in Kung Fu Hustle. He's like I don't remember. He has a job, but it has these rings. And so these gangsters come to town, and all of the people that live in the town end up fighting the gangsters. And so he has these rings, and he gets them on his arms, just like the Dad Chi did, and uses them as weapons. And I had completely forgotten about that part of it until, because I haven't seen the movie in a really long time. But in Sean's apartment, there's a Kung Fu Hustle poster on the wall. And as soon as I was like, oh man, I love that movie. I'm like, oh, wait a second. There's like a 10 Rings guy in that movie. It was really cool. And it was a really small thing. But I think there were some other things. I went back to make sure that I was thinking of the right movie and looked that up. And there were some Jackie Chan references somewhere. And I can't remember what the details of them were now. But anyway, I thought that was really cool that there was a little, just a poster on the wall. I was a little confused, speaking of posters, about the timeline where this happened.
So initially, when he was a kid, they were saying it was in 1996.
Yeah.
And then he grew up, and things looked like they would be in now times.
They are, but as far as where it relates to Endgame. And so the reason I was confused is because...
Oh, it was after that, because they had mentioned the blip that like half of the world got
I didn't know if
out.
it was after Infinity War or after
or
Endgame.
after Endgame. Oh.
So, but it was after both of them. And the reason I was confused is because at the beginning when they were going through San Francisco to go to the bars or whatever, there was a poster on the side about like if you lost somebody in the blip, or it was one of the like social service kind of posters, but it was about that. And then in the after credits scene, Bruce Banner's there. And I'm like, well, wait a minute.
Uh-huh.
When he
As
became...
Bruce Banner, with his arm all messed up. So
Yeah.
it was after Endgame.
So it would have to be after Endgame, but he was Banner, not Smart Hulk.
He must have disassociated himself.
And at the end of Endgame, Captain Marvel came in with short hair. And then in that scene, she had like full shoulder-length locks. Mm-hmm. So there's a significant amount of time there, but it was after Endgame. But it really confused me. I was like, wait, why is Banner there? And so it would be nice to have a little more clarity. I'm sure we'll get that in the future, about exactly when it was, but it was after. So
nice cameos. Wong had a couple cameos.
yeah, that was pretty great.
That dude better be making some money. He's in a lot of different movies.
Is. Yeah. Okay, here's a question. The thing I don't understand. At the very end, Awkwafina's character, Katie, she was, like you said, she's along for the ride.
Yep.
She didn't really do anything.
Nope.
She eventually realized that she was an archer and started shooting arrows, maybe like twice.
Saved the day.
Yeah, fair enough. But she shot an arrow.
Right. Still doesn't get you on the docket.
Right. So why did, when Wong shows up to bring Shang-Chi with him to we got to question you, and you too. Like,
he knows the future.
Why is she? Oh well. No, he doesn't have the eye of Alexander Algamago, whatever his name is.
Agamotto. Which that we can talk about too. But
yeah, that's true.
She's got to do more. I mean, she's a big name actress. They wouldn't bring her on for they possibly could bring her on as a sidekick, but
yeah.
I don't know the depths of Shang-Chi's character. Maybe he has some other, Robin to his Batman. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be.
But
I just thought that was a little weird because, she wasn't. I'm not saying she wasn't useful in the story, but she didn't have a power. She didn't show up as a, any particular
you're a regular
thing. It was just oh yeah, you have to come too.
But even then, Shang-Chi's power, which I kind of dig, is face punching. He has the heart of a dragon or whatever.
Yeah.
From what his mom said, but yeah, you're good at punching faces because you've been indoctrinated as a child. So
that's true. I guess he doesn't really have any.
When his dad put the rings away, and then he became mortal, and then he became somber, thinking about stuff, Dad, not warlord, Dad. There was regular people, and there was a shot of them hanging out. I presume watching Friends or whatever, and then Shang-Chi's mom dies. I don't remember how.
You don't remember
that part's mushy. How did she die?
A gang showed up at the house.
Oh yeah,
she took them all.
That's
on,
right.
And
it looked like Asian Goodfellas.
Yeah,
they were trying to shake him down, and his mom sent Shang-Chi in the house, and then she died.
Yep.
But then her dad said that she was alive somewhere because the soul sucker creatures inside the scabbed over mountain were tricking him with her sorcery. And he succumbed to the trickery, and then he died in a way that, yeah.
Thanks for listening to Terrible Cliff Notes with Josh.
Yeah, there was a scab, and he was banging on the scab with his 10 rings, and he let all the evil
octopus faces
bat
out.
Monkey things out. the bat monkey dementors.
Yeah,
he let them out of the scabbed over mountain, and then there was a dragon underwater, and then the underwater dragon. The never-ending story style ride that Shang-Chi did on the underwater dragon was fighting the gigantic, big bad monkey dementor.
And monkey,
like the flying monkeys, but he was like
a monkey in that. But
he's not like a bat because he had more of an anamorphic. So if you took a flying monkey and a bat and put them together, and a dementor,
and yeah, so you have the premise. You have most of the movie there. Enough of it anyway.
And then they were fighting, and then Awkwafina shoots a single arrow right through the jugular of the big bad monkey thing. And then I blinked really long, and I don't remember what happened after that.
And then they won, basically.
Yay. So does he have the rings now?
He does. Yeah. So the way that they won, you may have missed this, which was actually pretty cool. His dad let go of the rings, and then he got him. Everything was about lost, and then he basically shot the rings down inside the mouth of the big monkey squid, and then made him spin around. And they turned into a bomb inside the thing. And then when he pulled them back out with his power, it exploded the big monster, and guts went everywhere.
That's why you don't let your kids play with magnets.
That's right.
Small children should not play with magnets for that very reason.
That is true.
It's a PSA. from us too.
Yeah, so that was, maybe you missed that part, and that was kind of cool, I think. I keep losing my train of thought. I have these things. I'm like, yeah, I should talk about the thing, and then I should.
Okay, so he's got the rings.
Write them down.
The end credit scene, they were talking about the rings themselves with Banner, Captain Marvel, and Wong. And they're like, they're not vibranium. There's something else.
Yeah.
What is the something else?
Well, so I don't know what the material is, but I do think that the beacon that it was talking about is the thing that will draw in the Eternals.
Yeah, I think so too.
Setup for that. I mean, that was pretty obvious, I think, from the trailer.
Which we haven't talked about the Eternals trailer or the third Spider-Man trailer. So do you think that... So the Eternals trailer, we know a little bit about the Eternals now. They're beings that were established long ago to not interfere with the happenings of Earth unless they had... What were they called? The monster whatever things that they're supposed to fight? Some kind of monster things. They're only allowed to fight them. So they're Holocaust, the Strife, Thanos, all that. They weren't allowed to interfere. But as long as these scary-looking monster things, they fight them.
Yes.
So I assume that the thing that Shang-Chi killed was one of these scary-looking monster things that the Eternals were supposed to fight. But they didn't.
Possibly.
I don't know. So I think there's maybe an Eternals tie-in.
Yeah.
Is this... Are we seeing the groundwork for a new Avengers?
Yeah, I think so. I think Kevin Feige actually said recently that, of course, there's going to be more Avengers movies, but we're working toward that team slowly, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's going to be a while because they're kind of starting with a clean slate. I mean, as far as, you know, major characters and multiverse stuff, like they can milk the multiverse exploration pretty far before they have to have a team up, I think.
To combat it.
Right.
Yeah, to put everything back the way it should be.
Yeah, so I think we're still pretty far ways off from another Avengers, but of course it'll happen. And it'll be, you know, probably led by Doctor Strange with new almost everybody else. Maybe Hulk. I don't know.
She-Hulk is coming out.
Yeah.
So She-Hulk's an option. I imagine that when we see Bruce Banner with his arm bandaged up, I think maybe was the guy that plays Hulk?
Ruffalo?
Mark Ruffalo was like, I'm not putting that thing on anymore. I'm not putting the mocap suit on because he's very vocal about hating it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When guy that played Thanos showed up, he was like, haha, you have to put on this thing now. And so I think maybe he's on his way out too.
Could be.
Or since he was able to revert back to just his regular people form, I wouldn't imagine that he would be very keen on getting back into that same mocap stuff.
Yeah, I could see
But sure, Captain Marvel was there. I'm trying to think in the comics when they had the new Avengers. There were different Avengers. There were like East Coast and West Coast Avengers.
Yeah, I mean, there was the Young Avengers. It could be a bunch of different things. I don't know.
Yeah, the multiverse is gonna throw everything for a loop, which I think is gonna be fun.
I honestly don't know that we need. I mean, what do I know? But I don't think we really need another big team up movie for quite a while. I think the interesting like the Spider-Man Doctor Strange team up being that they're in the same movie. That's enough for me to find. It's a weird crossover. It's some adventure that will only happen because the two of them are involved. That's cool. And I think you could do that with Thor and the Guardians. That's crazy. I can't wait to see that.
Yeah.
But they could do more of those and less of we need 10 of the strongest people to fight the biggest bad ever. It's like, you know, just like lean into these little offshoots and then maybe someday they all come around and culminate into something. But I don't know. I'm not really in a hurry for another big, you know, Infinity War style.
Yeah, I kind of don't want to see those for quite a while.
Yeah.
With all the movies now being part of universes, just make a good standalone movie. I mean, this was a good martial arts movie that had superhero-y stuff. Like, if they didn't mention any of the other MCU characters, it would have been a pretty decent martial arts movie.
Yeah.
Standalone all by itself. I wish I had more face punching, but maybe in the second one they'll have some better face... Not better, but like more good face punching scenes. But it's weird that we're in the new stage, and the release date of all of these shows is strategic. And so just by going to watch Shang-Chi, there's a part of me that's like, well, I just want to go watch a cool martial arts movie, but then I want to see what connective tissue they're going to lean into.
Yeah.
Because that's every new Marvel thing now is not a standalone. It could have the best plot, the best character development, but it still has to lead to the next thing. And so a good portion of me was like, okay, what's the lead into the next thing?
Yeah.
And there really wasn't a huge hint at the next thing. I mean, in the end credit scenes where they went with Wong, like, sure, is that Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness or whatever that's coming out? Like, they could probably go there. I could maybe go into Spider-Man. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because the interconnective tissue is so dense right now surrounding Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
So the multiverse, either Wanda starting the multiverse, either the Loki's starting the multiverse, if Doctor Strange, according to the Spider-Man trailer, is also in a hand of starting the like that's a cubed multiverse. Like, good God.
Yeah.
So Doctor Strange being at the kind of epicenter, being the last all-powerful, earthbound kind of creature that can have influence over all of these people, and pretty much his wizardly powers can do whatever he feels like doing. Like, it's a lot more condensed.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. It's funny. I hadn't really thought about it as like all of those different multiverse, touch points happening in succession.
Mm-hmm.
But like in the history, and I say history, not as in like cinematic history, but in the actual year history of the MCU, back to, I don't know, whenever
2008.
No. I mean, like in the stories, like back to World War II. Let's say it started then. There's been no interaction with the multiverse. There's been no messing with. There's been no bleed over. There's been no alternate, problems. And then all of a sudden, it's like Wanda and Doctor Strange and Loki, and there's like now it's just gonna hit, and it's gonna be multiverse stuff everywhere.
Yeah.
And it might make a little bit more sense if somebody cracked a thing and then it started to leak out. But it's like you have these kind of individual breakthroughs where like his spell, Doctor Strange's spell messes up and that opens up a multiverse thing. The Loki's killed so-and-so and that opens up one. It's not like there was one crack and then it's leaking out of the crack. There's like multiple cracks at the same time. It's just a little weird, but not a big deal. So outside of that, we went to the movies, and it wasn't the first movie that we've been to as a family in a long time. We went to see Black Widow. That was the first one, I think, in a very, very long time. But it was so cool. I love going to the movies with my family because they love the Marvel stuff. All of us do. Love Star Wars. And we don't see a lot of movies in the theater, but like it's a big deal to them.
Yeah.
It's a fun, oh, sweet, we get to go see a new thing. And
oh, yeah.
It's so much fun. So we went to see that. And then 2 days later, or no, I guess the next day, they had been wanting to see Jungle Cruise. And I'm like, well, I guess we could, it's a long weekend. We can go to 2 movies in one weekend. It'll be fun. And so I looked up times for Jungle Cruise, and looking at the seating chart, there were like, we were going to be broken up in between a bunch of other people.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, ew, I don't know if I really want to do
Go to the 9 p.m. There's like 3 people.
So I got thinking about it, and I'm like, well, we can just rent it on Disney Plus, which I kind of hate the idea of like paying for $30 for a movie on Disney Plus that's in the theaters.
But there's a lot of you to go to the movies.
$40.
Yeah.
To watch it on my couch.
Yeah.
Because I'm paying for like all of us. I paid for, my parents would have gone. I would have gotten their tickets probably just to get them all at the same time. And it was like 70 something bucks, man, just to go to the theater.
How was the experience though?
It was perfectly fine.
Okay.
Well, I think our internet was acting a little weird, so it like buffered several times, which it never does that on our TV. So that was a little annoying, but as a movie, just like watching any other movie. And granted, if I had waited another 2 months to watch that same movie, it wouldn't have cost anything, more than what we were already paying. But it was just an interesting thing to like have the experience of going to the theater as a family, see something on the big screen, best seats in the house, kind of that cool, yay. And then also seeing something that pretty much everybody wanted to see, which was a lot of fun to watch on our couch for far less money. So
Well, that's how I watched Black Widow. I was over at Wes's house, like we talked about a couple episodes ago, and he had already paid for it, and so he just like has access to it.
right.
It's not like a pay-per-view where you only have access to it for so often. I don't know. Actually, I don't know if you're limited to how many times you're able to watch it, or you just get it in perpetuity now.
I think you kind of own it. Yeah. I mean, I would certainly
As much as you own it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I remember watching Black Widow and going, yeah, like this is fine. Watching it at my house. Because even though it was a Marvel movie, it wasn't super spectacular. Like when Top Gun comes out, I want to watch Top Gun in the most IMAX-y theater that I can possibly watch it in. I want to watch it from the backseat of an F-18. I don't want to sit on my couch with my kids and my dog whining because I need to fill the water bowl. Like, I want to watch that and have that experience. So I get that there's a bunch of drama right now surrounding actors and directors and production crews and when they're getting paid and they're not getting paid for this, but they are getting paid for that. Like, that's unfortunate, and they need to work that out. And people need to win or lose some lawsuits to figure it out. But
yeah.
I think there may be some movies that, like Jungle Cruise, I am not invested enough in that movie to care. So watching it at home would seem far more appropriate.
Yeah.
But then those seats at the movie theater are pretty comfy to fall asleep in. So that's part of...
Well, it depends on how much money you want to pay to fall asleep.
That's true. But then it's a family thing they can enjoy, and I can just rack out.
Yeah, that's true. I do think that there will always be certain big things that I would prefer to go to the theater.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never been one that, like, I have to see it in this format or I have to see it, in these conditions or whatever. Like, I just enjoy movies.
Yeah.
Even bad movies, I still enjoy movies. And the more I can pay attention to the thing I'm watching, the better. And so if that means I need to be in a closed-off black room and that's the only thing that's happening, great. If it means that I'm in the most comfortable chair in my house watching the TV that I know how it works and what it's supposed to look like and all that, then sure. I mean, either one of those. But it was interesting for the first time to have that experience of two brand new things that were in the theater in two different settings back to back. Mm-hmm. I think they were both perfectly fine. So we'll see how that affects our movie going in the future. But I mean, I definitely saved money. That's for sure. But we haven't watched, we didn't watch Raya and the Last Dragon until it came out of Premiere Access because it was like, I don't know, it's another Disney movie. It was fine. But waiting 3 months, and same for Mulan, which I really enjoyed. But waiting 3 months to be able to watch it for free I'm good with that.
If Luca would have been a Premiere Access, I wouldn't have watched it because I didn't know much about it. There was not a lot of marketing surrounding that movie. Yeah. It just kind of appeared. It was a fantastic movie. Mm-hmm. And if my future self could have told my past self, like, oh, you should go to the theater or you should pay the Premiere Access for this one, but not this one or whatever, then maybe. But I think I haven't paid for a Premiere Access movie yet because none of them have been that drawing to me.
Yeah.
Shang-Chi is not a Premiere Access movie right now. It's only in theaters, which has done surprisingly well. And AMC has been very happy that the attendance numbers this week were a little better, have matched or were a little better than 2019's weekly totals.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they're seeing an uptick in movie going or in cinema attendance, which has been encouraging. And it could be that there's just no good movies to go watch. And so people were excited about Shang-Chi, and they did not have the option to stay at their house to go watch it. So if you want to watch it, you got to get up and go.
Right.
It was the same thing with A Quiet Place 2. Quiet Place 2 was not digitally streamed anywhere that I'm familiar with. I don't think it was. I think that was purposeful for John Krasinski. He wanted the movie to be experienced in theaters. Fantastic. I loved it in that format.
Yeah.
I loved It's funny. One of those things, one of those events is a date, and one of them is not.
Huh. Yeah, that's true.
One of those is an individualized experience with the kids, and one of them is lesser than that notion.
Yeah.
I love going to theaters. I mean, just walking into that theater by myself, like, that feeling is awesome. Like, I've walked out of maybe 2 movies my entire life, so just that association of entering a theater is always a positive one. And so just the feeling surrounding it could make the experience all the better.
Yeah.
Not that it's lessened because it's in my house, but like, yeah, I'm sitting in the same spot that I normally sit in to watch New Girl. My phone is going to be over there. So if I get kind of bored when the dialogue starts to get kind of lippy, then I'm just going to grab my phone and just completely zone out. I love that a movie theater forces me to focus my attention on the gigantic thing that's in front of me, hits all of my senses, overwhelms me with experience.
Yeah. And I wonder if part of that, the goodness of that, is to do with how picky you are with the movies that you see.
Yep.
Because I'm the same way. I've walked out of one, I know of, maybe 2 movies in my entire life. And other than those, I don't go to a movie unless I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, it's not just like, oh, I'm bored. Let's go roll the dice.
Some people do. And
like, it always tripped me out when Seinfeld did that.
Yeah.
Like, they went to the movies all the time for things that they were like, oh, what do you want to see? I was like, how do you not know that already?
Right. Like, they want to go to a movie and then they find one rather than, like, I want to go see this movie.
The act of seeing something on a screen in front of them is sufficient for the experience, not I'm going to watch that.
Yeah. That seems crazy to me.
Yeah.
But that makes it so that, when you go in, or I guess when you walk out, you've seen something that checked a box for you. Whatever that was, regardless of how good it was, it did a thing that you were expecting it to do. And so that gives you a good way to, interact with movies. I'm the same way. Like, I can't remember the last time I went to the theater and walked out really, really disappointed.
Kicking and screaming.
Well, I can. Snake Eyes.
See, I didn't want to waste my money. I did not want to waste that experience or taint that experience by seeing something I knew that I was not interested in.
And it's funny because with that movie, I was on the fence. I'm like, well, I could just rent it. It's going to be like, meh. But my family was still in Florida. I was here by myself. And I'm like,
oh, yeah.
This is a night I can go to the movies by myself and see a G.I. Joe movie. And then I walked out of there going, dang it, I should have gone to the shop and like worked on something. Done something more fun.
Should have done work. Blech.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, nostalgia. Let me down again.
Anyway.
Well, is there anything about the Eternals trailer or the Spider-Man trailer that you think would be pertinent to these interwoven MCU conversations?
So the thing about the Eternals, I wasn't excited at all about it until this most recent trailer. And then it looks way bigger than I was expecting. Yeah. It looks like really grand. And so that's cool. I'm looking forward to that. Dude with the laser eyes, whatever his name is.
Icarus.
He looks cool. It almost looks like he can't quite control his eyes. And I don't know the story. I know nothing about any of these characters. So if he can't, that's even better. It just seems like a Cyclops thing where you like kind of can control it, but kind of not. But I do wonder, these like all-powerful beings who have a specific mission, how are they going to interact with the MCU long term? Because they're going to be fighting
overpowered. They're
like going to be fighting a present danger in that movie. But once that's their mission, and when that mission's over, are they just going to like fade back into the crowd and like I don't know? It seems kind of weird because they seem
we were here.
Yeah, like God level, and they're just going to stop being helpful all of a sudden. I don't know. I'm worried. I'm not worried about that. I'm curious about that.
In the trailer, when Angelina Jolie was like face to face with what seemed to be the big bad, the CG orc looking thing.
Yeah.
I remember that part kind of was off-putting to me. And the reasons I didn't like Thor for the really first and second movies was it seemed so fantastical and out of this world, but still the movies were trying to be grounded in like some earthbound reality, and they weren't like at all. And so it wasn't relatable. And so if it was pitched to me that it was just like a space monster story, like, okay. But how it's relatable to Earth, and I think that's their whole thing, is they're keeping the Titans or whatever it is like at bay for the Earth dwellers. That seemed interesting, but it also seemed like, oh, now we're getting into like ice monster, Thor type world that I was less interested in.
Whereas like Ragnarok was in a different place, had a whole different set of rules.
Right, but it was still grounded in like their reality.
Yeah, right.
And
that's interesting.
So, and granted, it was like a half a second scene.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know what to expect of it. I think it is kind of neat. I read up a little bit on the Eternals, that the idea that they came to Earth to protect it, and then they interacted with like the ancient Greeks and the gods and things, and so like it's based in a lot of mythology and lore.
Yeah.
and that they had some influence a long time ago, and some of those stories kind of filter in.
Like,
I don't know.
They were like the prototype for the mythology.
Yeah, like their Sprite and Icarus, they're characters from mythology.
Gotcha. Interesting. Yeah, I don't really know anything about them. The Spider-Man trailer, I feel like I think that trailer has a lot of misdirection in it.
I think it does too.
Like a whole lot.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see like how that actually plays out. I saw something recently that there's I don't know if it's a rumor or just an expectation that they were actually gonna, in the final trailer, actually show the other two Spider-Man actors and not try to keep it a secret, but like lean into it, which seems kind of crazy.
I wouldn't do that.
Well, it seems crazy, but then if you think about, if you're Tobey Maguire and you're coming back as Spider-Man, you're getting paid a ton of money for it. And to not be included in any of the marketing up front for a movie like that, like, I wouldn't be happy about it if I were him.
I don't know.
But at the same time, you kind of got to know what you're signing on for, I would assume. So I could see it both ways.
But one thing about this trailer that is frustrating.
It wouldn't make me more likely to see it, though, if I saw them. I'll just say that.
Yeah, we're seeing that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I've become increasingly frustrated with this movie. That hasn't even happened yet. There's been a single teaser trailer about it. But there are people that are really, really good at Photoshop that are making super awesome movie posters with Daredevil in them. There are people like, is the hand that is shown in a fraction of a milliframe? That's, oh my God.
Milliframe?
That's Daredevil's hand. Look at this. Look at this screen grab from Daredevil season 3. Look at this from screen. Oh, this is that guy. That has to be his hand.
Yeah.
I'm like, don't do that.
I saw one Photoshop earlier today that was Philip Michael Thomas. Is that his name? No, that's not his name. That's the dude from Miami Vice. Sandman from the old movie. I can't think what his name is. He has like 3 names.
The guy from Northern Exposure? Not Northern Exposure.
Wings.
From Wings.
Yeah, him.
Yeah, that guy.
It was a Photoshop of him with his current older face, but with his striped Sandman shirt on. And it looked legit. Like, it was kind of grainy. Like, it kind of looked like somebody had a still of him as the character. And then the caption was like, this is being passed around. This is 100% fake. So-and-so did it. Whatever. I'm just like, oh, man, come on.
Stop it.
Like, I'm not personally a huge Spider-Man fan. I mean, I like Spider-Man, but he was never like my favorite character growing up. So I don't have a particular attachment to, a lot of the villains or the character stuff around it. So I'm just excited about it as a movie. I don't have that like personal attachment to any of the particular characters that some people do, so.
Spider-Man was my jam.
Yeah.
At my local comic book store, they held the comics every week. They held Spider-Man for me. As an adult, when I wanted to try to get back into comic books, I went back to where I left off as a teenager and went right back to the clone stuff that a lot of people either hated or loved. I think Ben Reilly as the Scarlet Spider was one of the coolest Spider-Men. I love that series, and part of me just like, okay, Tobey Maguire, sure, whatever. Facebook Kid, whatever, second movie. I don't think they're going to bring in the Scarlet Spider because they did like a Scarlet Spider nod in the first movie in Homecoming where he made his own suit and it kind of looked like that one, so I doubt they're going to bring it up.
Right.
But it'd be cool. I don't know how they're going to do it, but like I really enjoy Spider-Man and I like what the MCU is doing with Spider-Man, and now it's just going to get nuts. And if it's Tom Holland fighting all of the bad guys, if all the bad guys can come into one world, then why can't all of the good guys come into one world?
Yeah.
Like, that logic is there. And so whether it's actually Tobey Maguire or whether it's just the Spider-Man figure with some kind of voiceover to where Tobey Maguire's not credited in the movie because technically it wasn't him, but it's the Raimi-esque version of a Spider-Man, like, sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. I want to watch it, though. And it would be dope if Daredevil showed up.
Yeah, that would be cool.
That would be awesome. I've got a few comics where Daredevil and Spider-Man meet up and hang out. Like, Daredevil saved his life one time.
I've got several Daredevil comics, but never any with Spider-Man. I was into Daredevil when I was in college, and I don't remember a lot of crossover with anybody at that point. Whatever series that was, I don't even remember.
Elektra took over as Daredevil in the newest one that's out right now. So I'm starting to collect the newer Daredevil because that line is intriguing. I haven't figured out why yet. Yeah.
Interesting. So we talked we need to wrap it up here in a minute.
Yeah.
But we talked recently about the Avengers and about the major characters. I said something to the effect of they took the major characters and made them into the first kind of wave of Avengers. I don't remember the exact situation. Somebody left a comment saying on Twitter or something, saying how a lot of the characters that they actually used were kind of second class or third class.
They were the JV team.
Right. But what's funny about that is that's all relative. And I guess maybe from my perspective as not a huge comic person, I had a few comics that I was really into, but I didn't have like the expanse. Like I have a handful of Spider-Man, but I never really read Spider-Man. So in my mind, like I have maybe 2 X-Men comics. So X-Men were cool, but they were never like a huge thing to me. They were a huge thing to everybody else. I get that. But that comment made me think about the fact that there were so many different characters across Marvel and DC. Everybody latched on, and still does, latched on to a character or a set of characters that they had something in common with, or they really liked something about, or just some story that they really liked. And to them, that was the first tier character. Mm-hmm. And so it's funny when you have that conversation about like the Avengers being first or second class or third class or whatever, the tier structure. It's like all relative. And I'm sure that there was some marketing dollar behind each of those that you could say, no, actually they spent more money on Captain America than anybody else or whatever. But, as a kid, Iron Man was like the thing to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He was, Iron Man and Batman were like the ones. And so for me, for them starting with Iron Man when it came to the Marvel stuff,
just made sense.
Dope. Like, this is what I've always wanted. This is fantastic. And everybody else is like, what, Iron Man? Like, why are they starting with that dude? And it's just funny because I never really considered that until that comment came up that everybody kind of comes into comic and that type of stuff in a different place and just latch on to something,
Well, think of this, your kids and my kids and maybe people that are a little older than them. Their perception of comic book characters right now are mostly from movies and TV.
Yeah.
And so if they like the MCU, if you've got kids on the hook, any Marvel character outside of the MCU is stuff that Disney hasn't acquired or didn't have acquired at the time. So X-Men at the time are a bunch of kids. So that's not the proper X-Men or not the final form or the most intense or the most whatever that I would associate with X-Men. The Fantastic Four that people may have seen, they're like, oh, those movies are terrible because my mom and dad said that they were kind of dumb and didn't live up to the hype. But like those 2 properties alone were the most popular Marvel comics of all time.
Yeah, right.
And so to have, the relative, like you're saying, JV team now be the thing that people latch onto, I wonder if that dynamic is going to flip. Because Fantastic Four hasn't been introduced yet. And honestly, comparative, they've got the Incredibles. So now Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman and the Human Torch and the Thing, like all those people are going to be compared to things that already exist now. The Thing looks like, oh, he's an orange Korg. Yeah. It's like, oh no, that's the Thing. Like he was around, he was OG, but now you're just going to compare him to a character that you already enjoy. So I think in other people's mind, like comparatively to something that's already popular, more popular, they're now the B team. Yeah. Because they're not original. Right. Whereas Iron Man was original at the time, is original now. Yeah. Elastigirl has now become Mr. Fantastic.
Mrs. Incredible.
Yeah, like.
Yeah. Anyway.
The baby.
I know what you meant, but yeah.
And the Thing can turn to fire. Yeah. They're like, oh, that guy can turn to fire like the baby in The Incredibles. Yeah. That's the narrative.
Like my youngest son, all my kids know Spider-Man. They know the Peter Parker Spider-Man. But they latched on, especially my youngest, latched on to Miles Morales.
Oh, yeah, mine too.
And if you say, who is Spider-Man? He knows there are more than one names, but he will say Miles Morales. Yeah. And, and then there's Peter Parker too. Which is cool. I mean, that's great, but it's exactly what you're saying. Like, whenever those things are released, it becomes a localized newness for anybody. I was thinking about this earlier because there's a new Matrix trailer that came out.
Oh, man.
I was in college when The Matrix came out.
Yeah.
And I went to see The Matrix, and I left, and I went, oh, that was pretty cool. I like that. It was fun. I have friends who are just a few years younger, about your age, a little bit younger, and that was the thing that blew their minds. Yep. And so for me, when I talk about, like, I have a friend named Ryan who I think is probably your same age, and when I talked about Star Wars, he would just like kind of roll his eyes and be like, I mean, it was good, I guess. It was like an old movie or whatever, but it changed what I think of as fantasy and what I think of as all that stuff. And then when he talked about The Matrix, I'm like, it was like, that was pretty good, I guess. You know, but like, whoa, it was that to me. But to him, that just like changed what he thought was possible in movies. It's the same thing. It's wherever you are when you see something that is new at the time, that blows your mind, it's the thing that sets in and becomes like a touch point for you. Same things works with characters, with music. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, everybody has that album that really just changed what they think music could be, you know. So anyway, it's cool to see, and I think with the ridiculous number of characters and opportunities that Marvel has, they can continue to put in new influence into generations of kids as like, this is the thing that you're going to really latch onto 5 years later. Here's a new set of things for the next group of kids to latch onto. And they can just keep doing that. It's the same
stuff on repeat. And I think that's where, as cool as the marketing for the new Matrix movie has been, they've done something that every time you click on the red or blue pill, it tells you what time it actually is when you're watching it. That's crazy. That's super fun. It's different every time. But that's still the Matrix.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. Yeah.
Like, there's always going to be that part of me that hopes those touch points are not going to be a new Star Wars movie or a new Matrix or a new superhero movie. Yeah. Like, I don't know what that new piece is, and I don't know what that new touch point is going to be. I mean, the same thing for Harry Potter. I mean, that completely changed what people thought was available in fantasy. I was too old when Harry Potter came out, so I was like, oh, they're wizards. Like, okay, yeah, neat.
Yeah.
But there are people that have completely surrounded their identity around the fact that you could be a regular person and be a wizard. Mm-hmm. Just the same as like, oh, we're all in a computer program, or there's a galaxy far, far away. Like those little contexts that people find themselves that shake their perception of fantasy or fiction is so fascinating. So in the Fantastic Four and the X-Men conversation, I think completely not starting over, but like forget about everything else in the past because it's been overshadowed. So whoever is going to play Wolverine, get people that someone no one has ever seen before because they're going to compare him to Hugh Jackman.
Oh yeah.
There's no way that you can't.
Right.
So ignore it and start something completely new, completely different. Envelop him into the world because it's a completely like it's a far more it's a stranger dynamic than the rest of the MCU. So where like that team building, like we're all gonna work. The X-Men had that, but it imploded in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it
was all like in my mind with the X-Men that I thought was cool as a kid. It was all built on this like super shaky bed of rage. Either Wolverine was inducing the rage, and then Jean Grey was inducing the rage, and it was all just this balancing and trying to like manage this explosion of characters all together. To whereas the Avengers, they're disparate characters and they all have their backstories or whatever, but they all banded together for good. And so to see the X-Men try to get enveloped into the world now, into the MCU now, the dynamic is very different. And I think that their most popular characters are now being in the trough of popularity for the younger community. I'm interested to see what it is, but at the same time, I would like to see that touch point be something that's not recycled from the past.
I do think that over the last few movies, they've begun to spin out a little bit on like what a Marvel movie is. I think Ragnarok was the first one where it was just like, oh, we can do something like totally wacky and we can have fun with it. Granted,
I loved it. That
still
made
kind of followed
me like
the same
Thor.
thing, but they definitely were reaching out,
right?
Spinning out to a bigger orbit. And I think Shang-Chi did a similar thing in a different way, just because I think it leaned more into like the mystical, cultural stuff in a different way than they had. And I think the next Thor movie is going to do the same thing. So maybe in those expansions, as they begin to broaden what a Marvel movie can be, maybe that'll open up opportunity for a different dynamic in some of the X-Men stuff, or like that the Fantastic Four is not just like a family that kind of gets along, but then there's that one kid who sets stuff on fire and he's real cocky, and I mean, like maybe they can find a different way to do a family dynamic that still gets the same idea across.
Yeah.
But just is not as recycled. I think it's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked for a long time.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah.
Everybody, for listening us to ramble about movies and stuff. Big thanks to the Maker Alliance, who supports this show and a bunch of other stuff that we do. We are really grateful. Where's the thing on the screen?
On the screen.
He's not paying attention. Oh, there it is. If you want to join the Maker Alliance, go to iliketomakestuff.com/join. The Maker Alliance is a group of awesome people who both get behind the scenes access to us and what we do, but they also are a part of a community, and they do stuff together that doesn't really have anything to do with us, which is pretty awesome. Josh was telling me before we recorded that two guys, David and Zach, got together like...
Yeah, their families met up and hung out.
Yeah, they like don't live in the same place. They drove several hours just because they know each other now, and they're doing stuff, and that's awesome. It's a great group of people. The Discord is very active, and if you want to be a part of that, you can join up. We'd love to have you. Where can people find you, Josh, on the internet?
At Josh_MakeStuff. That's it.
Everywhere, pretty much.
Yeah.
And you can find all of us at I Like to Make Stuff on all the stuff. I think that's it. You got anything else?
Nope. We're very happy to hopefully in the near future let people in on some of the stuff that we're doing.
Yes.
It's so close. It should have been a couple of them should have been happening by now, but because external things that we alluded to earlier, hopefully some of those will correct themselves and we can stop being so vague.
Yes. And the Maker Alliance will be the first.
Yeah, we'll tell them first because,
Yeah.
that's kind of the deal.
Yep. All right, cool. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And we'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye. No.